Last two in the office. And she just called me her Christmas miracle. The office was quiet, bathed in the soft glow of desk lamps that flickered gently against the polished floors. Outside, the city lights shimmered faintly through the tall windows, muted by a gentle snowfall that coated the streets in white. It was one of those rare late nights when the building felt suspended in time, empty, still, and almost private. The hum of computers and the distant buzz of the heating system were the only sounds breaking the silence. He lingered near his desk, pretending to focus on emails, but his attention kept drifting. She was there, a few desks away, her presence steady and calm amid the soft chaos of scattered papers and holiday decorations. Her posture carried a quiet confidence. Every small movement, the arch of her back as she leaned over documents, the deliberate sweep of her hand across the keyboard, felt graceful and measured, the kind of control that only comes with experience. She was physically striking, but not in a way that shouted for attention. It was subtle, the soft gleam of her hair in the lamplight, the faint warmth radiating from the cup of coffee she held, the way her fingers traced the edge of a document with thoughtful precision. He noticed everything. The gentle crease of her brow as she concentrated, the slight tension in her shoulders that hinted at fatigue, and the small sigh she let out, almost imperceptibly, when a spreadsheet refused to align. There was a vulnerability there, hidden beneath layers of poise and professionalism, and it pulled at him in a way he couldn't ignore. He felt the quiet stirrings of curiosity and admiration, tempered by hesitation. He didn't want to disrupt her space, didn't want to cross the unspoken boundaries of late-night office hours. Yet, the urge to bridge that distance, to simply be near her, lingered like a quiet hum in his chest. The holiday decorations added a layer of warmth to the room. Strings of golden lights reflected softly off the surfaces, their glow mingling with the faint aroma of pine from a small tabletop tree. The contrast between the cold world outside and the cozy interior heightened his awareness of her presence. The way she seemed like the calm center of a quiet storm. He noticed the subtle details. A delicate bracelet that caught the lamp light, the way her shoes shifted slightly as she adjusted her posture, the soft clink of a pen cap as she set it down. Each movement drew him in, not in a fleeting crush, but with the careful, attentive observation of someone slowly realizing that this person mattered more than they should at a simple glance. As he sat back in his chair, pretending to review a report, he allowed himself a brief, inward smile. There was something almost magical about the way she existed in this ordinary space. So composed, so quietly commanding, and yet approachable, human, relatable. He felt an unspoken connection forming, fragile and tentative, the kind that might blossom if nurtured carefully. Tonight was just the first brushstroke, the quiet beginning of something neither of them would rush. And as the snow fell softly outside, he realized he was watching not just a colleague, but someone who might very well leave a mark on his heart. Slowly, gently, like the subtle flicker of holiday lights in an empty office. The office felt even quieter now. The hum of the computers, once comforting, seemed almost amplified in the emptiness. He walked past her desk, trying to appear absorbed in his work, though his eyes couldn't help but linger. She glanced up, meeting his gaze for a fraction of a second longer than necessary. The moment was brief, almost imperceptible, but it carried an unusual weight. Her eyes held a warmth that didn't need words, and for a heartbeat, the air between them seemed charged, like a soft current passing silently in the stillness. He noticed the faint scent of her perfume lingering in the air, subtle but familiar, a delicate mix of vanilla and something earthy, grounding. It wasn't overpowering, just enough to make the room feel warmer, more intimate. The bracelet on her wrist caught the light as she moved her hand to adjust a stack of papers, the soft clink of metal punctuating the quiet like a delicate note. He felt a strange pull in his chest, a mixture of admiration, curiosity, and something tender that he couldn't quite name yet. She offered a small, easy smile, one that suggested recognition, acknowledgement, a silent, "I see you here too." It wasn't flirtation. It was something subtler, a quiet bridge across the empty office that felt significant simply because it existed. He wanted to say something, to break the silence without seeming intrusive, but words felt clumsy. Instead, he allowed himself to notice the little things. The way she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the slight shift of her shoulder as she leaned over the desk, the subtle grace in her posture that spoke of years of experience and quiet self-assurance. Their shoulders brushed almost accidentally as he reached for a document on the same shelf. The contact was fleeting, a whisper of warmth, but it left him strangely aware, his pulse quickening in a measured, contained way. She didn't pull away. If anything, she leaned into her work with just enough nonchalance to make the moment linger without acknowledging it outright. He caught himself imagining what it would feel like to stay close, to simply share the space beside her, to exist in that quiet orbit for a little longer. "Working late again?" she asked, her tone light, carrying a hint of teasing that made the room feel just a little smaller, a little more private. There was a casualness to her voice that contrasted with the subtle tension building beneath it. He replied with a measured laugh, the kind that felt more natural than it should have in such a charged, quiet space. Their conversation was minimal, almost perfunctory, but each word, each glance, felt loaded with unspoken acknowledgement. As he moved past her desk, he realized that something had shifted. The distance between them hadn't changed, but the space felt charged, filled with possibilities he hadn't dared consider before. The subtle connection was enough to make him aware of her presence in a new way. Her calm confidence, the faint vulnerability he sensed beneath her composed exterior, and the quiet warmth that seemed to radiate even in the dim glow of an empty office. For the first time that night, he felt the slow stirrings of something more than curiosity, a fragile, tentative awareness of the bond that could grow, if only they allowed it to. The office was quieter than ever, the hum of the computers and the faint buzz of the heating system providing a gentle backdrop to the rare stillness. They were now the only two left, the soft glow of desk lamps and the golden reflections of holiday lights creating a cocoon space in which the world outside seemed to fade away. The snow continued to fall, each flake catching the city lights for a brief, shimmering moment before landing. She sighed softly, leaning back in her chair, and he noticed the subtle tension in her shoulders, the kind that suggested fatigue heavier than the long hours could explain. Her eyes, though composed, carried a glint of quiet worry. Without fully realizing it, he found himself inching his chair slightly closer. Not close enough to be intrusive, just enough that the space between them felt warmer. The faint scent of her perfume mixed with the subtle aroma of coffee, grounding him, making him aware of the small human details that made her presence so compelling. She spoke softly, almost to herself at first, about the pressures of the holiday season. The family obligations, the expectations at work, the weight of carrying it all gracefully. Her voice didn't ask for sympathy, but he felt compelled to offer it anyway. He listened, leaning slightly forward, letting the silence fill the space between her words. He didn't interrupt. He didn't try to offer advice. He simply let her speak, his presence steady and patient. Her fingers traced the edge of a document, a subtle nervous tick he hadn't noticed before. He watched her carefully, noting the faint way she pressed her lips together, the soft tilt of her head when she was lost in thought. His heart felt strangely tethered to those small gestures, as if each movement was a clue to understanding her more deeply. He wanted to reach out, to offer some comforting touch, but he held back, aware of the delicate balance between closeness and respect. "I guess, sometimes it just feels like too much," she admitted, her eyes briefly meeting his. There was no vulnerability in the sense of weakness, only honesty and openness that drew him in. He responded quietly, "I get it. It's okay to feel that way." His voice low, careful, carrying sincerity without pressure. He noticed the way her shoulders relaxed fractionally, the slight softening of her expression, as though his simple acknowledgement was enough to ease the tension for a moment. They shared a small, quiet smile, one that didn't need to be explained. It was a smile that said, "I see you. You're not alone here." The room felt warmer, not because of the desk lamps or holiday lights, but because of the subtle connection forming between them. Each fleeting glance, each careful pause in conversation, was a building block of trust. He was aware of the age gap, not in words, but in her composed, experienced way of facing challenges and in his more tentative, observant approach, but it no longer felt like a barrier. Instead, it was part of the rhythm that made their interaction feel unique, grounding, and quietly electric. In that shared space of vulnerability, a subtle intimacy began to form. It wasn't marked by grand gestures or overt romantic moves. It was in the steady, patient attention, the careful observation of one another, and the unspoken permission to be human. That night, as the office remained hushed and the snow continued to fall, both of them felt the first stirrings of a connection deeper than mere curiosity. A connection that promised warmth, trust, and perhaps something more, if they allowed it to grow slowly, gently, naturally. The office had grown quieter still. The distant hum of the elevator and the faint whir of the air conditioning were the only reminders that the world beyond these walls continued to move. Outside, snowflakes drifted lazily against the city lights, painting a muted canvas of winter. In that serene bubble, every small sound and movement felt magnified, every glance loaded with unspoken meaning. They were seated near each other now, a few feet apart, yet the air between them seemed charged. A shared laugh had slipped past earlier, light and unplanned, lingering just a fraction longer than necessary. He noticed her eyes watching him after the laugh, a soft warmth in her gaze that made his chest tighten in a way he tried, unsuccessfully, to hide. It wasn't just attraction. It was awareness, a quiet acknowledgement of shared presence, a mutual recognition that something subtle was shifting. A pen rolled off her desk, and he instinctively reached for it at the same time she did. Their hands brushed, fingers grazing, and the contact sent a surprising warmth shooting through him. She didn't pull away. Instead, her hand lingered just slightly longer than needed, a silent, unspoken invitation to acknowledge the moment. The warmth of her touch was fleeting yet powerful, a spark that ignited a mix of anticipation and hesitation. He caught himself noticing the gentle arch of her brow, the way her lips curved slightly when she smiled softly at him, and the faint tilt of her head when she was listening. Each detail seemed charged with meaning, even if neither of them said anything. Her presence was magnetic, grounding yet thrilling, and he felt the quiet tension of wanting to close the distance but knowing he should wait. "I didn't realize it was this late," she said, voice low, almost a whisper, breaking the silence without shattering the moment. The casualness of her tone only amplified the intimacy. He responded, careful not to let his own voice betray the fluttering awareness of their nearness. Their conversation flowed easily, light and teasing at first, but each word was underlined with a subtle current of emotion neither fully named. She shifted slightly, leaning in toward her work, and he noticed how her shoulder brushed his as she adjusted her posture. The contact was accidental, or at least they allowed themselves to believe it was, but the effect was undeniable. His pulse quickened, awareness sharpening. The warmth from her side, the faint scent of coffee mingled with perfume, and the soft glow of holiday lights all combined to create a suspended moment that felt separate from ordinary time. He found himself lingering in the pause, watching the way she exhaled softly, the subtle relaxation of her posture, and the quiet grace that radiated even in mundane movements. For a fleeting instant, he imagined reaching out, letting a hand rest gently over hers, but he restrained himself. The hesitation, the unspoken "not yet," made the tension sweeter, more delicate. That night, in the hushed office, a small, electric closeness had formed. No words could fully define it, and no gesture had overstepped the delicate balance. But the connection was there, undeniable. A brush of hands, a shared smile, a look that lingered too long to be casual. Both of them were aware, each in their own way, that something was beginning. A slow, tender pull that promised more if they were willing to wait, to notice, and to let the moment breathe. The office felt suspended in time, as if the world beyond the windows had paused for them. Outside, snow continued to drift lazily, settling on the city streets below. The golden glow of the holiday lights cast soft reflections across the desks, warming the otherwise sterile space. The hum of computers and the distant ventilation system were the only reminders that life still moved beyond these walls. She was still at her desk, eyes focused on the paperwork, but there was a subtle shift in her posture. A quiet pause, a momentary hesitation in the rhythm of her movements. He watched, heart quietly tethered to her gestures, noticing the slight tension in her shoulders easing, the gentle arch of her brow as if she were deciding whether to speak. Something in her gaze softened, an openness that invited honesty. Finally, she looked up, meeting his eyes directly. Her voice was low, almost trembling with vulnerability, yet carried the gentle confidence that had drawn him to her from the beginning. "I guess you're my Christmas miracle," she said. The words landed softly in the warm, hushed office, delicate yet weighted with sincerity. They weren't playful or teasing. They were real, quietly transformative. His chest tightened, and for a moment, he felt as if the room itself had contracted to just the two of them. The words echoed in his mind as he became acutely aware of the subtle details around him. The faint scent of her perfume lingering near her, the soft glint of her bracelet in the warm lamplight, the gentle rise and fall of her chest as she exhaled. Every small detail amplified the significance of her confession, making it feel as though time had slowed just to accommodate the moment. He hesitated, aware of the space between them, yet drawn inexorably closer by the sincerity in her eyes. His hand hovered near hers, not daring to cross the boundary but responding to the silent invitation her words offered. The warmth from her presence radiated through him, comforting and thrilling at once. He noticed the subtle quiver in her fingers, the faint tremor of anticipation in her posture, and the way her gaze held him with an unspoken question. "Do you feel it too?" In that fragile, intimate pause, he realized that the emotional tension they had been cultivating, the quiet smiles, the lingering glances, the accidental touches, had crystallized into something undeniable. He responded softly, voice steady yet gentle, "I feel the same." There was no grand flourish, no dramatic declaration, only quiet acknowledgement, a mutual recognition of the bond that had been forming between them. The moment lingered, suspended in warmth and subtle electricity. Their connection was no longer just curiosity or admiration. It had become something deeper, intimate yet appropriate, an unspoken promise of care, attention, and emotional closeness. The office around them might have been ordinary, mundane even, but in that soft glow, with the snow falling silently outside, they had discovered something extraordinary. A tender, age-gap romance, rooted in respect, observation, and heartfelt sincerity. As they returned to their work, both felt subtly changed. The confession hadn't broken the rhythm of the office. It had enriched it. A quiet intimacy now threaded every glance, every small gesture, every breath between them. For the first time, the possibility of something lasting, warm, and genuine felt real and imminent. The office had emptied completely now, leaving only the soft glow of holiday lights and desk lamps to illuminate the space. Outside, snowflakes drifted silently past the windows, settling on the city streets below, transforming the world into a quiet, frozen tableau. In the stillness, every sound, the soft scrape of a chair, the rustle of paper, the distant hum of the building, felt amplified, intimate, and personal. They lingered near the window, not speaking at first, simply observing the city below and the gentle fall of snow. There was a shared comfort in the silence, a quiet intimacy that needed no words. He noticed the subtle warmth radiating from her presence, the faint scent of her perfume mixing with the crisp air drifting in from the slightly opened window. It was grounding and thrilling all at once. She reached out almost instinctively, letting her fingers brush lightly against his arm as she leaned slightly closer to see a document. The touch was fleeting but electric, sending a quiet awareness of warmth and closeness through him. He didn't pull back. Instead, he allowed the moment to exist, savoring the delicate intimacy that didn't need to be labeled or rushed. The sensation of her hand against his arm was soft and grounding, her touch confident yet careful, a silent acknowledgement of trust. Their conversation flowed naturally, tender and reflective. She spoke softly about her childhood Christmas memories, the subtle traditions she cherished, and the things she missed about simpler times. He listened intently, noting the gentle rise and fall of her voice, the faint quiver when she recounted moments of nostalgia. Occasionally, he would respond with quiet observations, the kind that made her glance at him with a warmth that felt like sunlight cutting through winter gloom. As they shared stories, they shifted slightly closer than before. Their shoulders brushed lightly, and this time, neither flinched. The accidental closeness felt deliberate, a mutual desire to linger in each other's presence. He noticed the warmth of her hand when it rested near his, the gentle tilt of her head toward him, and the subtle sparkle in her eyes under the holiday lights. Each gesture was small, yet together they built a profound sense of connection. At one point, she paused, letting her fingers lightly rest on his arm, her touch reassuring and steady. He felt a quiet thrill, a sense of being truly seen, yet also an enormous respect for the unspoken boundaries they maintained. The age gap, the difference in experience, the delicacy of their emotions. All of it made the moment more poignant, more tender. For a while, they simply existed together, sharing the quiet of the office and the beauty of the night. It was not about grand gestures or dramatic confessions. It was about warmth, presence, and mutual understanding. In that suspended space, with snow falling softly outside, they discovered a closeness that was safe, intimate, and profoundly moving. A connection built on respect, emotional honesty, and subtle, meaningful affection. When they finally left the office, their hands brushed again, lingering longer this time, a promise unspoken yet fully understood. The tenderness between them had deepened, a slow-burning flame that promised more moments like this, more warmth, and more quiet magic in the spaces they shared. The office was finally empty, bathed in the soft, golden glow of holiday lights that reflected across polished floors. Outside, the snow had thickened, covering streets and rooftops in a quiet, white blanket. The city hummed faintly in the distance, but inside, the world felt still, intimate, and entirely their own. They gathered their things slowly, neither rushing, savoring the lingering warmth between them. Every movement felt gentle, deliberate. He noticed the way she adjusted her scarf, the subtle tilt of her head as she smiled softly at him, the faint warmth of her hand brushing against his as she lifted a folder. The small gestures, the ones ordinary in daylight but extraordinary in the hush of night, spoke volumes. As they walked toward the elevator, their shoulders brushed lightly, the contact lingering just enough to make both of them acutely aware of one another. He could feel her warmth through the fabric of their coats, a grounding, reassuring presence. She didn't pull away. Instead, she stepped slightly closer, an unspoken invitation that was both tender and safe. Each glance, each soft smile, carried the weight of shared understanding and a connection that had grown steadily over the past hours. Outside the building, the crisp winter air greeted them. Snowflakes settled on hair and coats, melting almost immediately, leaving only fleeting traces of the cold. He noticed the faint sparkle in her eyes as she took in the streetlights, the subtle shiver that ran through her frame, and instinctively he offered his arm. She accepted with a soft smile, their proximity comforting yet unhurried. The quiet intimacy of the moment didn't need words. They walked together slowly, laughter rising occasionally over the crunch of snow beneath their feet. Their conversation was gentle, filled with shared observations about the city, the holiday decorations, and small, private jokes that made the night feel suspended in time. Each glance held meaning, each smile a confirmation that the connection they had nurtured was real, mutual, and treasured. At a small cafe they passed, the warm glow of lights spilling onto the sidewalk mirrored the warmth between them. He noticed her subtle gestures, how she tucked her hair behind her ear, how her hand rested lightly on his as they paused to watch the snow fall. He felt a quiet thrill at the simplicity of the moment. Being near her, noticing every nuance, sharing the space in a way that was entirely their own. As the night drew to a close, they reached the point where their paths diverged. Neither wanted the evening to end, but there was a gentle understanding, a shared patience. Their hands brushed once more, lingering longer, and in that fleeting contact, there was a promise. that this was only the beginning, that moments like this would continue to unfold, slow and tender, as naturally as snowfall in winter. She smiled softly, voice warm and low. "Thank you for tonight." He met her gaze, feeling the quiet satisfaction of something complete yet ongoing. "Any time," he said, a simple word loaded with meaning. They parted with a lingering glance, hearts light, aware of the slow-burning connection that had grown from curiosity to trust, from small touches to quiet confession. The night, the snow, the soft lights, all of it had been witness to a story that began in observation and ended in warmth, a fully realized connection between two people who had found in each other something rare. Intimacy, respect, and a tender, age-gap romance that felt timeless.